explain something before I start the discussion. This is Emergency and Disaster Nursing, GNS 315. Placement for the course is third year, first semester, but generally for the basic nursing student, but since you joined them, so it's just about the same discussion we're going to be having with you. And this is a 3-credit unit course. I want to explain something before, as I said, and whatever information you get from me now, whatever discussion I do now with you, I want you to merge it with that of Mr. Tajuddin that had this class 2 times earlier. I traveled out of town for quite some time, and he had to come in my place to discuss this emergency and disaster nursing with you. So whatever I say now that he has said before, that's fine. Whatever I say now that he has not said, you just merge it with whatever he has discussed with you. So to me, this course has not started yet. To me, but to you it has started. So whatever information you got from him, merge it with what I'm going to discuss with you now. So this is emergency and disaster nursing and introduction. Whether you like it or not, emergencies occur, disasters occur. Whether we like it or not, since they occur, we have to be ready for them. So what is emergency and disaster nursing? These are situations that disrupt patterns of life. When emergency or disaster occurs, it disrupts your life pattern. It disrupts the life pattern of those who are involved. And it usually comes with loss of life, loss of properties, and even death do occur along with some of the things I've mentioned. When I said loss of properties, it has to do with disruption of services. And what are services? When disasters occur, when emergencies occur, human beings live in environments. They enjoy different services. So when there are disasters, these services are disrupted. What are those services? Water, electricity, hospital, attendance, all these become disrupted when disasters occur. So individually, let me define what emergency is. Okay? Definition of emergency now. Emergency is a routine event that medical service personnel handle on a daily-to-daily basis. It is usually an unforeseen circumstance. Emergencies are usually unforeseen circumstances that call for immediate intervention. When emergency comes to you, they are usually life-threatening and they require intervention immediately. And the immediate intervention has to do with the fact that you want to prevent further damage to the patient. What is disaster? In a simple way, let me tell it, let's forget about this English I'm talking about, or this grammar I'm discussing. Disaster brings emergency. Disasters bring emergency. Simple as that. Whatever definition you are given, disasters will bring along emergency. But not all emergencies are due to disaster. Okay? Disasters bring about emergency, but not all emergencies are due to disaster. So let me continue. Let's talk about definition of disaster now. Definition of disaster. Disasters are events that require outside assistance. Disasters are events that require outside assistance. When disaster occur, okay, it will require assistance from outside where disaster has occurred. It is a sudden or great misfortune or an unfortunate event whose timing is unexpected because you don't expect it. It comes suddenly. And the consequences are usually very destructive. A disaster, the event of disasters are usually unexpected. And when they come along with unexpected consequences. So if there's disaster, if there's emergency, that's a part of what we're discussing now. There's what we call disaster nursing. Disaster nursing. Meaning that nursing has to do with disaster. Meaning you are taught in nursing how to handle disaster. So in hospitals, in different areas, there are portions, areas where nursing is given particularly for disaster occurrences. So that is what we are going to be discussing now. I hope I'm clear. So remember, emergency, disaster, definition of emergency, definition of disaster. But I said to you, in a simple grammar, simple English, simple understanding between me and you, disasters bring about emergency. But not all emergencies are usually due to disaster. As we go along, we are going to discuss that as we go more in this discussion of emergency and disaster nursing. So disaster nursing now, meaning nursing care or nursing that has to do with disaster. Aspect of nursing that is given to or attention is paid to disaster is what we are going to discuss now. Any emergency situation. Remember I said to you, disaster brings about emergency. So in disaster nursing is any emergency situation that results or that brings or comes due to disaster has to do with disaster nursing. And in disaster nursing, the health sector cannot handle it alone. In disaster nursing, the health sector cannot handle it alone. Meaning, disaster nursing, even when we are caring for patients because of disaster, it is not only us that are going to do it alone or that are going to do it. Others will come in for us to be able to do our care as far as disaster is concerned. And who are those that are going to come in? The local community will come in when there is a disaster. That nursing has to come in. The local community will have to come in. You will be wondering, what do I mean by local community? Remember now, disaster, when they occur sometimes in the community where people live. Even though we have not mentioned different forms of disaster, but when they occur, they are usually in communities where human beings live. If they would occur where human beings are not available, then who cares? let those disasters come now, as long as it doesn't affect human beings. So who are those that are part of what I said now? That is not only health sector, nursing that can only handle it. Others will come in. So those others that will come in are local community will come in, civil defense that we have around now will come in, the military can come in, the police will come in, the firefighters will come in, the government will come in, non-governmental organizations will come in, and voluntary organizations all will come in. Why do they come in? Because they all have part to play, okay, in the occurrence of that disaster that will help us nurses to do our work better. Disasters can be man-made, or disasters can be natural disasters. Man-made, that means it is due to our own carelessness that will bring about the disaster. Or it is the nature that will bring about that disaster. When we say nature, we're not saying God brings about that disaster, no. But that disaster, okay, is not by human beings, but it is by nature. And nature here means the environment we live in. We'll come to that because I don't want to jump the gun. So when man-made disasters come, it could have been prevented. But when natural disasters come, you cannot prevent it. So disaster nursing now is best defined. You are going to have the handouts along the way, so but pick up whatever I'm saying that you can hold in your hand, in your heads. So disaster nursing is best defined as the adaptation of professional nursing skills. The adaptation of professional nursing skills. In our nursing skills, we have different skills we use in caring for patients. But when disasters occur, we have to alter our way of care to be able to fit into that disaster that has occurred. So disaster nursing is best defined as the adaptation of professional nursing skills in recognizing and meeting the nursing, physical, and emotional needs of victims resulting from a disaster. The skills, alteration of our skills that we have to meet the physical, emotional needs of victims that have been involved in disaster. That is the definition of disaster nursing. And disaster nursing is practiced in a situation where professional supplies must be available, equipment must be available, physical facilities must be available, utilities must be available, so that you will be able to do your disaster nursing care properly. These have to be available. I hope I'm not too quick in my discussion. So, emergency disaster nursing, the introduction that I've given, the definition I've given about the emergency and disaster, and then I've gone into disaster nursing, that we have to alter our way of skill in caring to be able to accommodate disasters when they occur, because they will occur. As long as there are human beings, as long as the earth is there, as long as this world is there are going to be emergencies, there are going to be disasters. There are going to be disasters that are man-made, there are going to be disasters that are naturally made. Remember, we've not gone in because I don't want to bombard you with things that you should be knowing later by bringing them initially. There are terms. Okay, so I'm going to another portion of our discussion now. And that portion is terms used in emergency and disaster. In nursing that you are in as midwives, there are terms that you are also taught that you'll be encountering every now and then as you are in disaster section of nursing. As you are in midwifery, as midwives, you encounter different situations, and there are terms that you use in the hospital. And the moment you use it, you know what yourselves are talking about. The outsider may not know what you're talking about. So there are terms used in emergency and disaster, and those are things I'm going to discuss now. I won't be able to exhaust them all because of time. So, but number one term that is used in emergency and disaster nursing is what we call basic life support. Basic life support. In human beings, in us, you and I, there are basic things that is keeping us alive. Air is keeping us alive. Blood is keeping us alive. Blood is circulating in our circulatory system. Air is given to us through our respiratory system. So that's what we call basic life support in emergency. So in emergency and disaster, we give basic life support, and those are medical things we do. And those are like bleeding control, it's a life support that we give. Splitting broken bones is a life support that we give. Artificial ventilation is a life support that we give. And basic airway management. Because for us to be able to take in air in and out, the air passage must be free. It mustn't be blocked. Because if it is blocked, air will not be able to get to our lungs, air will not be able to get to our tissues. So that's what basic life support has to do with this. When you hear another term, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, cardiopulmonary resuscitation, meaning the heart is failing to do its work, the lungs are failing to do their work, meaning they are weaker, or suddenly they cannot be able to do their work. So that's what we call cardiopulmonary resuscitation, meaning you bring back the heart to its functions, you bring back the lungs to their function. And the function of the heart is to pump blood by what? Contracting and relaxing. The lungs also do their work by doing what? Relaxing and contracting also. by expiration and inspiration, by the lungs enlarging, by the lungs contracting. That is how we take in air, or the heart pumps blood in and out. So when there's threat to human life, meaning when the heart has stopped briefly, or the lungs have stopped doing their work because of disaster, you do what you call cardiopulmonary resuscitation by doing things that will bring the heart back to life and bring the lungs back to their work. I've just explained it for you for your understanding. I know some of you know this already. In terms in emergency and disaster, you have what we call heart attack. And heart attack has to do with inability of the heart to do its work because it is dead. And the heart dies if it is not getting blood supply. The heart will die if it is not getting blood supply to it. As the heart is giving the body blood supply, it is also giving itself blood supply. So the moment blood supply to the heart is cut off, it means the heart will die. If the heart dies, it will not be able to pump blood to the body or to itself. And we call this heart attack. People confuse heart attack with stroke. People confuse heart attack with stroke. So there is heart attack. So now I've talked about heart attack. So let's go to stroke. Sometimes stroke is sometimes called CVA. Excuse me, CVA. Cardiovascular accident. CVA, cardiovascular accident. I mean, there's accident. And it is a rapidly developing loss of brain function as a result of blood supply reduction or stoppage to the brain. And that is what we call cardiovascular accident. Sorry, cerebrovascular accident. I'm sorry. You know, when you travel and come back, you lose concentration sometimes. CVA is cerebrovascular accident. That cerebrovascular accident has nothing to do with the heart disease or something. So cerebrovascular accident is what, so you either say stroke or cerebrovascular accident. And stroke occurs if you be having misconception about it. Let me clear it for you now. Stoppage of blood supply to the brain comes in two ways. It comes either through blockage of the cerebral arteries supplying the brain, that's a blockage, or bursting of the cerebral arteries in the brain. So when they burst, blood is not reaching where it is supposed to reach, meaning that blood vessel that has bursted is not going to take blood to the area that it is supposed to take blood to. Or when a blood vessel in the brain is blocked, blood will not be able to get to where it is supposed to get to. That is what is called stroke. The stroke has nothing to do with the heart, but it has to do with blood reaching the brain, either through blockage or through bursting. And that bursting is where the accident comes from. So stroke is previously known medically as CVA, cerebrovascular accident, and is a rapidly developing loss of brain function as a result of blood supply reduction or stoppage to the brain. Because the blockage may not be complete blockage, so blood will be going through a little portion that is left, that is not blocked, to supply, reduce blood supply. Remember, it is your brain. It is our brain that makes us do everything that we do. All my behaviors that you are seeing now, my talking, my looking at you, my gestures that I'm doing, my speech, all have to do with this almighty structure we have in our skull called brain. So that is why nature has kept that our brain, okay, in the skull for protection. Another time you will be hearing in disaster and emergency is what we call trauma. And trauma is just an injury or wound to living tissue, injury or wound to living tissue. There are many times we can. I'm just picking some for discussion. In disaster nursing, also, or in disaster emergency, you'll be hearing word emergency services. And emergency services are those services that are specialized agencies that have to do with responsibility when it comes to disaster. I mean, they have a responsibility to carry out when there are disasters. And they call these emergency services. And they are there. Their main function is to serve emergency situations. In disaster management, in disaster nursing, in emergency, there is what we call vulnerability. That's what we call vulnerability, meaning vulnerable to disaster. If you are a military person, if you're a firefighter, if you're a mountain climber, your work makes you vulnerable to disaster. Your work makes you vulnerable to disaster. If you are an engineer, building houses, building bridges, building highways, that your work you are doing makes you vulnerable to disaster, because anything can happen because of your work. In fact, even you, where you stay, in fact, everybody is vulnerable. If you drive vehicle, you are vulnerable to disaster. So you are susceptible, meaning because of your work, you are susceptible to having injury due to disaster. There's at another time we call biological disaster. These are due to pandemics and epidemics. We had different disasters. We have different disasters. Ebola was a disaster. The recent thing we had that kept us in our houses, the virus, that we had that kept everybody all over the world on their toes, putting on masks, washing your hands, with different instructions that we were given. Coronavirus is what I'm talking about. Was a biological disaster. There are terms that are also used for those who work in disaster. Your FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agencies, are organizations that have to do with disaster. Others are there that with our time that we have, I don't want to continue going through them one by one. So there are some terms are there that we will be discussing. So I have discussed some terms that you will be using when emergencies occur. And when you are using those terms, not many people will know what you are talking about. And it is you in the emergency or disaster area that will know what you are talking about. There are some concepts in emergency and disaster. There are some concepts in emergency and disaster. When I say concepts, there are some ideas that are put in place so that when disasters and emergencies occur, okay, these are steps you follow in handling them. And some of these concepts in emergency and disaster include, for disaster concept, they include some of the following things. So you have subheading concept in emergency and disaster. That's what I'm discussing now. For concepts in disaster, these are some things that I want to mention. The idea behind disaster is, number one, disaster risk reduction. When there are disasters, one idea is that there should be risk reduction, so that when disaster occurs, the risk of injury is minimized. So the idea is that when it occurs, there should be reduction in or minimization of disaster impact. Because when disasters occur, there are usually impacts. So one idea in place is that when it occurs, we should try to reduce the impact of disaster as much as we can. That is one idea. That is one concept in disaster. Another concept is emergency preparedness. So when that disaster, number two is emergency preparedness, so that you prepare the disaster victims for emergency intervention. So these are measures that are going to be taken before the patient is taken for emergency intervention. So those measures are there, and so the idea is you must have emergency preparedness. And the last one under disaster concept is what we call humanitarian assistance. Humanitarian assistance. And this humanitarian assistance has to do with providing assistance to affected population. As I told you, disasters do not occur in isolation. They occur where human beings are. That is why we'll be concerned about disaster. If disaster occurs in the sea, or disaster occurs in the forest, where human beings are not there, do you need to assist human beings? because they are not there, they are not involved. So humanitarian assistance is also there that we prepare for, so that those affected during disasters are assisted. Now let us come now to concepts in emergency. And remember what I told you from the beginning. Disasters always lead to emergency, but some emergencies do not occur because of disaster. In emergency, there's what we call triage, Trage, triage, that is emergency. So after disaster has occurred, it shifted to emergency. Those who are going to take care of those who are involved. So that in emergency, there's what we call triage. And triage is sorting out those victims according to how the injury has occurred due to disaster. So that is also always put in place. Triage is put in place during disaster when it comes to emergency management. During emergency, there's what we call search and rescue. Because when a disaster occurs, leading to emergency action now, you have to look for people, you have to search for human beings or animals for that matter. So that is the second concept in emergency. The first one is triage, the second one is search and rescue. The third one, the second one is search and rescue. The third one is evacuation and shelter. When disaster has occurred, now when it comes to emergency action, you evacuate people from where disaster has occurred and provide shelter in the first place. Because rescue may not come quickly, so those that are involved in disaster will have to be sheltered somewhere nearby in the sense far away from where disaster has occurred. Remember, I've not mentioned these disasters yet. And under this emergency concept is what we have. We have emergency communication and coordination. So under emergency now, care for disaster, you have to communicate. Because people will have to know where you are, where the disaster has occurred, so there is communication. Not only communication, there has to be coordination. Those people that are going to be involved, those are also there to be planned. And I'll just stop for here. And so there's disaster concept, there's emergency concept. Those are the few that I've discussed. Another subheading that I'm going to be discussing, incidentally, I think we have to give you course outline. I know we gave you in the other, I think I gave you in the other class that we had in the foundation of nursing that we discussed. So I'm going to present you with a course outline so that you also be reading along before we come or after we've come, you read more on your own. So the area I'm going to go into now is what we call key players and stakeholders in emergency and disasters. Key players and stakeholders. And these are these people that I'm going to, and stakeholders that I'm going to mention now. Government agencies, FEMA that I discussed earlier, they are key players and stakeholders because they have to come in when there is disaster. Federal Emergency Management Agency. Number two, non-governmental organizations also are there that partake when disasters occur, and we call them NGOs. There are community-based, number three, there are community-based organizations that are based where the disaster has occurred, are also stakeholders and key players. Number four, private sectors and businesses are also stakeholders. Because businesses will provide money, provide needs to areas that disasters has occurred. They provide this to different key players so that they use it in caring for disaster victims. And of number five, there are international organizations, the United Nations, the International Federation of Red Cross. All these are organizations that bring about, they donate, they make personnel available when disasters occur. I have an area that I think that is what I will use in ending my discussion. And that area is, I mentioned that disaster can be human or naturally caused. Disasters can be either humanly caused or naturally caused. Those are the areas I'm going to delve into now. So the subheading of my discussion is disaster. Semicolon, human and natural. A human-made disaster, it is of human intention. Humanly caused disaster is of human intention. It is due to negligence or error. Due to man-made ecosystem. Let me put it that way. It is negligence or error involving failure of a man-made ecosystem. What are human-made ecosystems? Bridges, highways, vehicles, high-rise buildings, electrical supply, dams that are built, Kainji Dam, Shiroro Dam, different dams. All these are human-made things that are part of what we call ecosystem. Because they are human-made, there can be failures in these. A very good highway, well-tarred road, because the road is so well tarred. You drive here on it, and because you are enjoying the well tarred road, you speed anyhow. But when you are speeding, you are not following rules and regulation of traffic or driving. That brings vehicle there also. Vehicles are made by human beings. Aeroplanes, ships, railways, all that, these are human-made structures. When there are faults, disasters result because of their failures or their negligence. Some of these man-made disasters include wars. We're in Nigeria. Biafra War has happened before. Could have been avoided. We didn't listen to each other. It resulted into wars. Wars are human-made disasters. Bridges collapsing are human-made negligences. Building collapses are human-made disasters. Power outages, I mentioned Kainji Dam, all human-made negligences. Nuclear explosions are there, if you know what we mean by nuclear. Fires that occur are due to human negligence. They are human-made disasters. Crimes are human-made disasters where bandits, armed robbers operate using firearms, crimes of different sort, Boko Haram, banditry, all these are forms of crimes. Are these because of animals? No, but because of higher animals, human beings, us. Explosions occurring. Electricity explosions, because of this or that are not properly done. Explosions, okay, that are planted to destroy buildings. Terrorism, transportation accidents, civil disorders, all these are human-made disasters. These are disasters that are originated because of human beings. And all these I've mentioned now can be avoided with proper planning. All this can be avoided. Proper engineering work, proper this, proper that, proper building. All this can be avoided. My young daughters, my young sisters, my professional colleagues in midwifery and nursing profession, that's what we call natural disaster. We've discussed in a little way human disaster. Now, natural disaster. My mouth, my lips are getting dry, but we'll continue. I wish I had brought some water to be sipping. In natural disaster, they come as a natural phenomena. They come as a result of natural phenomena. I'm not going to say God created, because God doesn't create anything bad. Some of the natural disasters that occur are earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, hurricane, fire in the wild, droughts, animal attacks, landslides, heat waves, tornadoes, pandemics, epidemics, storms, insect infestations. These are what we call natural disasters. And I'll explain some of these. Okay, not all. We have what we call volcano. Because you've had geography in your secondary school, that's what we call volcano. A volcano occurs in mountains. If you can go to the top of a mountain, the tip of a mountain, there's an area there that when there's too much heat inside the mountain, it blows off out from the top, and we call this volcano. We call it volcanic reaction or eruption. This occurs in the mountains. There's what we call earthquakes. This occur on the earth because of different interaction inside the earth will crack, and when it cracks, because buildings are there, buildings collapse. These buildings will have human beings there, they collapse. And then we call this one earthquake. We have drought, where because of no rainfall, no planting of foods, different grains, brings about inability to be able to farm in those areas. Animal attacks are also things we call natural attacks or natural disaster, because animals are natural things that are natural structures. So when they occur, animals do not have our senses. So you may be innocently in an area and animals will come, lions, all this can come and attack you natural, because human being cannot control that. You cannot control animals in the bush. We have storms, rain, heavy rains. We have epidemics and pandemics that I mentioned earlier. We have tornadoes, air, strong winds, moving under speed. You know what we call whirlwind, that you see air during dry season, you see air moving, okay, up into the sky, moving, and there's an air issue I've mentioned. We are lucky in Nigeria. We're lucky in Nigeria, we don't have earthquakes. We're lucky in Nigeria, we don't have volcanoes. We're lucky in Nigeria, we don't have hurricanes. We are lucky in Nigeria, we don't have tornadoes. We are lucky in Nigeria, we don't have what again? Well, about those. But in Nigeria, we have floods, natural disasters. We have droughts in some parts of Nigeria. We can have animal attacks in Nigeria. We have landslides where, because of rain, what we call landslide, movement of rocks because of a lot of rain. We have sometimes we don't have much heat waves in Nigeria, even with our temperature, high temperature we have. But sometimes we do have heat waves that's so hot. We have storms in Nigeria moderately. So these are the natural disasters we have, and they occur. And when they occur, they become emergency situations in our hands. So we have to prepare people that will be handling these disasters in form of emergency preparedness. And natural disasters cannot be controlled, my sisters. They will occur when they will occur. Like death. Death will occur when it will occur. I guess I've gone over an hour or so now, so I think we better hold on now. So you see, we discussed, from the beginning, disaster management, disaster and emergency. I discussed, okay, what they are. I discussed their definitions. I mentioned that disasters, always result into emergency. But not all emergencies are actually due to disaster. Because when you have injury from stab wound, that's emergency, but that's not a disaster. Okay? Unless it is a mass stab wound by people that are out of their senses, that has stabbed so many people in an environment, or then it becomes a disaster. But a single one, that's not disaster. Let me add this. So, and of course, as I said, we've discussed, what natural disasters are, what man-made disasters are, those that are key players in the disaster and management. We mentioned them. And as I'm waiting for the ICT person, let me just bring this in quickly. And it is about, well, he has come now, so let me not go into where I cannot be able to finish. So, as I said earlier, your discussion with Mr. Taju, no problem. My discussion with you now, put whatever you have for me that he has not discussed, merge them together, and they'll be useful to you. Enjoy your evening, and we'll meet next time. Thank you very much.